Welcome to the Spa Girls podcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Shah Barrett.
And I'm Trudy J. And this week we are joined by Australian author Clare Connelly.
Hey, Claire.
Welcome, Claire.
Hi. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. It's great to have you here. So I'm going to read your bio out so everyone knows how awesome you are, and then we're going to dig right into all the questions. So Clare Connelly is the best-selling author of more than 120 angsty, passionate romance novels. Having self-published her first book in 2014, by the end of that year, she was an Amazon All-Star in the US and the UK and has since sold millions of copies of her books. She's now a hybrid author, continuing to self-publish, as well as writing her trademark romances with Harlequin and Toulet. Claire met her own real-life hero at the tender age of 18, and these days lives near the sea in South Australia. When she isn't running kids to after-school sports activities, listening to political podcasts, or experimenting with French recipes, she's writing, thinking about writing, or wishing she were writing. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Claire, tell us how you got into self-publishing. Like, what happened to drive you to be a writer and start publishing?
So I've always written, and in fact, a few days ago, I actually unearthed my manuscript that I wrote when I was 15 years old and sent off, which I'm holding up in the video, sent off to Mills Boon, and they wisely rejected it because I definitely didn't have the requisite know-how and life experience running Mills Boon at 15. I'd gleaned a lot from reading a lot. I always wanted to write, and particularly to write category romance. I love it. It's what I love to read, what I've always loved to read, or since I was about 12. So life got in the way. I traveled overseas, came home, got an amazing job working with Maggie Beer, which was, an absolute dream, but always wrote, whether it was really long emails or attempts at novels. It was something, you've got that passion and you have to find a way to express it. I had a cooking blog. I had another blog. I just loved to write. When my children were young and at home, that's when I really earnestly started trying to write for publication, submitting to Mills Boon. By then, you didn't have to send off a paper packet. You could just send an email, but it still took a really long time to hear back, and I was getting rejected. So I found that quite demoralizing, and I was very close to giving up the hope of actually being a published writer. And then my sister and my husband said, you can't do it. You've got to just try this self-publishing thing I've heard about. I thought about it and then went to a birthday party for one of my son's friends. And when they're young, it's more about the parents. Has a glass of wine and came home sort of buzzy and I had completed multiple books and really worked on these books because I'd been submitting them to Mills Boon, and I felt that they were good. They were certainly the kinds of books that I would want to read. So I got my favorite of the batch and I loaded it up on Amazon, no editing, and used their cover creator, like the original image. So it's actually this book I've got framed behind me, but that's a revamped cover. The original cover was, honestly, they look about 16, the couple that I had to choose because it was such a limited selection. I chose a banded cover because it sort of matched the branding a little bit of Mills Boon Australia. And I thought, maybe that will speak to my readers. It was very much a Mills Boon, like it was a category romance. Anyway, self-published it. And, with KDP, you can see your sales live. I could not believe it when I looked on my grid that night. I remember I was lying on the sofa watching something with my husband, and I saw a sale and then another sale. And it was just the most exhilarating thing to know that I had written something that people were buying and reviewing. It was just amazing. And by virtue of the fact that I had been writing for years at that point, submitting to Mills Boon, I actually had a couple of books ready to go, which turned out to be a great strength. As you know, rapid releasing. Yeah. I had my second one ready to go about a month later, and I used the Amazon. I think I gave away my first one, loaded up my second one, the first 3 chapters in the back matter of the first one before I did the freebie, which was just sort of guessing and seeing if it would work, like throwing mud at a wall in a way. But it did work. I had, I think, thousands of free downloads with no promotion or anything. And it drove people to my second book. And that's how it began.
Wow.
Love
It's
it.
so cool.
And was that in 2014? Is that when it's
2014?
Wow.
So by the end of that year, I had sold, I think I'd published 4 books by the end of that year, but I had, as I said in my, is it written in my bio, I was an Amazon All-Star in the US and the UK, which I didn't even know what it was. My husband actually had to Google it and say, oh, that means, you know, you're one of the top selling Amazon exclusive authors in those territories. It was a dream come true. I know people say that, but I was home with 2 kids. I wasn't working at that point. We were single income. We'd always said that if I could earn from my writing what I would earn going, you know, to a 2 or 3 day week job, but it meant that I could be at home with the kids. That was our preference. So we had very, very modest expectations and hopes for this as a career for me. So to be earning 5 figures a month by the end of that first year I published, it was like, you know, you feel like you've won the lotto if something like that happened. It was amazing. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Well, I think that's quite amazing, isn't it, to hear Claire's story like that, because we're often saying to people that you know, it doesn't really happen, you know, that it can't really happen that way, or that it rarely happens that way, because we don't want people to get so disappointed when they put that first book up and nothing happens. So to hear it actually did happen to you, Claire, and thank you for sharing that story, because I think it will be very inspiring to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. It was, I mean, you're right, it doesn't happen for everyone. And I think it wasn't, I hate it when people have any kind of success and attribute it to luck, but I do think that there's an element of the zeitgeist having lined up where I just wrote, and I think a lot of things, I know I did a lot of research writing my blurb, and I think that really spoke to my readership. I think that was probably the one thing that I did unknowingly at the time do right, was that my book was, apart from the fact I had adolescents on the cover of quite a raunchy, I think it did really speak to my ideal reader. And in fact, I noticed when I started to build a social media group that a lot of them followed a lot of the Mills Boon authors that I also followed. So I was definitely landing with my ideal readership.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurs to me, like, so Theodora Taylor also talks about like this book that she just kind of put up, and it was like a Viking going back in time or whatever it was, and it was the blurb for her as well. She worked out that she just hit the right tropes, just got really buttery stuff. And I imagine from the sounds of things that this blurb had the right buttery elements for that Mills Boon audience, because you knew it so well and you obviously done your research. Like that kind of feels like, does that seem...
I think I read about 100 blurbs in a row to get my blurb voice in, because it's so different to write a blurb to a book, and exactly that, you need to hit those tropes. So a romance reader, they know exactly what they're looking for, they know what their jam is, and so they just want to see in that sort of 2 or 3 paragraphs, quickly hit me, is this for me?
And also the fact that you had written so many books, but you'd written them in the genre that you had been reading for years and years and years. So you are doing your training before that you've ever put that first book up. You are doing your training and learning how to make a good product.
I always say that my first book, not my first manuscript.
Exactly.
You know, I think there's that temptation where you write a book and you go, it's great, I'll publish it. It's like, there's a whole process of learning your craft as well. However you go about doing that.
Yeah, definitely. And I was the same, although I went back and rewrote. I can't help it. I didn't publish the first book I wrote. I published later books, but then I went back and reworked the first book I wrote because I loved the story. And but there's that maybe that's a good piece of advice, I think. Like maybe don't publish the first book you ever write. Like try and
not necessarily. I mean, like everything, everyone's different, and the first book you write might be an absolute masterpiece. Mine certainly weren't, but you know, who am I to say what someone else has been able, because you also as a reader, as you guys know, you learn by osmosis from a very young age, so you don't necessarily have to practice your craft in your writing. Some people have that skill of having learned as they read, so that they just come to the page ready to tell a great story.
And some things come easier to some people, like craft. You know, some people actually do have to learn it, and some people, like you say, it's you just
I feel like
on board by osmosis.
I feel like they'd be fairly rare, the people who just take it on board by osmosis, though, don't you think? Like, are we? I think that maybe most people have a little bit of learning.
Maybe it depends what their career was as well, you know?
I think speaking for myself, I've watched enough programs on chess to know that I would be a master should I ever play it.
Yeah.
So,
But no, great line from Pride and Prejudice of Catherine de Bourgh.
Yeah, exactly.
Should I have ever learned?
That's me. That's who I want to be. That's how I aspire to be, a cat lady and Catherine de Bourgh mix. But seriously, I think also the beauty of self-publishing is you can either rework, or you can take that idea from that very first manuscript, maybe, because often we're very attached to that idea, and maybe a few years down the track or a bit later, when you have the craft knowledge to actually produce that idea in a form that connects with readers, that you can still use it. So nothing is wasted, is what we're trying to say here.
Yeah, absolutely true.
No,
So,
and I don't ever abandon a story now, because you reach that sort of, for me, my books are about 55,000 words, so 20 to 30,000 is my absolute hellscape, where I feel this is terrible, the original idea sucks, it's what was I thinking, the characters are boring, they've got no chemistry. But I know now that actually that's not the case. I have to just push through. That's my process. Self-doubt is very much my process, unfortunately. But I do have some manuscripts that are earlier in my career I abandoned around the 30,000 word mark, and some of those ideas, they're still so firmly lodged in here. I know at some point, whether I go back to that manuscript or just start again, but I know that those characters are still alive inside of me, and I have to get them out.
That little seed is still there, right? And seeds can last for years, but it's still that idea is still enclosed in that seed. I love that.
So can I just quickly, did you do any other kind of, like, I mean, we consider the blurb part of your marketing, but any more kind of overt marketing, like any ads or any other, so that was just literally organic sales?
It was. Wow. I mean, in 2014 it was such a different landscape, and I wasn't a part of any groups to do with self-publishing. As was said, it was sort of a glass of wine's fault that I published my first manuscript. I didn't have any list. I think I started a blog, but that was after I'd had some sales. I didn't even have my domain name. I think I got my social, I did everything wrong, which is why, like, in the course that we're doing through the How to Write Academy, we talk about set up your socials and your website just in case, because it's good to have that infrastructure beneath you when you start publishing. I didn't do that. I was, in fact, someone else actually bought my domain, and I had to then buy it off them, but I really wanted to have it. So it was, not a way I would suggest self-publishing.
All right. And so what happened from then? Like, so that first year you had all that success, you just kept going, like, you never looked back, like just kept publishing? And
so it really sustained me. I am a fast writer, and I suppose I stayed very much in my lane of what I love to write and read and what my readers love to read. So angsty, passionate, high drama, escapist, category romance, contemporary romance. I experimented with going wide. So I'm in KU, which is a big part of my readership. It just, for my types of readers, I think they just mostly seem to be in KU. I experimented with going wide, though, gave it a good year. That was probably when that is definitely when I saw a depression in my income, and went back into KU, and it immediately picked back up.
And
in the meantime, signed a deal with Mills Boon finally. Yay! They won it.
Funny.
Why wouldn't they?
So when was that? When did you sign the deal with Mills Boon and also Tule? Talk about that.
Yeah, so it would have been about 2017. I pitched at a Romance Writers of Australia conference to Joanne Grant, who at the time was, I think, the head of the editorial for Mills Boon in the UK. So she'd come over, pitched to her, and 3 months later I had a 2-book contract, which was just a dream come true.
Wow.
And it was and I think it was about a year later that I signed with Tule, who it's so fun to work with Tule. It's a very different publishing experience, but I get to write American set, small town, which is, I really enjoy dipping my toe in that water. I like, as much as I love writing what I write, it is quite fun to give a play in other ponds sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially when you're writing a lot, it's good to have that kind of little mental shift.
That's a palate cleanser, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us how that works. Like, you've got these, so you've got your own self-publishing, and then you've got these 2 other publishers. How many books do you write for each of them? And are you still writing for Mills Boon or Harlequin and Tule?
Yeah, so Tule, I haven't got anything in the pipeline for them. Well, when I say I haven't got anything in the pipeline, I haven't got anything scheduled to write, but I know what I will write next, and I hope that they will publish it. So I'm writing a series for them. So it would be the third book in that series, set in a fictional town in North Carolina called Cape Hope. And it's really fun because, again, it's not billionaires or millionaires. It's sort of just normal people. I really enjoy writing those. So when I have the space in my schedule, I'll come to that. Mills Boon, yes, I write for them. I write between 3 or 4 books a year for them. There was a time where I was writing 10 books a year for them when they had their Dare line, and that was or 8 books and 2 novellas or online pieces. So that was a lot. And self-publishing, yeah, I mean that is the mainstay really of what I do. So that's the bulk of what I write, I would say. And again, a lot of freedom with that, because I'm still in my lane, but there's a bit more wiggle room, I suppose.
Are you finding a crossover of readership between your KU-based self-published and what I would describe as, you know, category romances, or international, the big ones, the big drama, and the Mills Boon readers, or are they two separate readerships? There'll be a little bit, I imagine, but would you say it's the same people, or is it 2 different audiences?
I think it would be hard to say. There's definitely crossover. So there's definitely readers of mine who are those early readers who I know were reading the Mills Boon authors, and they came to me as an indie. But then I think there are some people who just exist purely on KU who are able to get, you know, their romance fix on the KU titles.
And very often those readers are reading 1, maybe more books a day, aren't they, in those subscriber programs? So they're huge readers.
Yes.
Can I just ask, so you say that self-publishing is the mainstay of your income. So I'm taking that to mean that you make most of your money from self-publishing. So what made you decide to go the trad route as well? Like what was it, and what is it about it that continues to be something that you want to do? Like, what are the benefits to being hybrid, basically?
Well, it's definitely partly just that I just adore Mills Boon. Those books were so important to me growing up as a teenager. I loved them, and so to be able to write for them, I consider a real privilege. I think these books are incredibly important. I think that the way they put generally female pleasure and female journeys at the center of the stories that they tell, I think is so great. So I love that. I love that through Mills Boon, I'm translated into heaps and heaps of countries, including manga. Like I've got anime copies.
Wow.
Awesome. But also it's, you know, when you first start selling as a self-published author, it feels a bit like you've won the lotto, but then you very quickly get used to that as your income. And I wanted more income stability. So I think diversifying in lots of different ways is a really good idea. So whether that's going into your own translations as an indie, or audiobooks, or doing hybrid publishing, or setting up a couple of different pen names if you're able to service those, however you can do it, so that if something affects one side of your business, you've got another area, especially if, like us, you've structured your sort of your family life around your income as a writer.
And also being in KDP, being exclusive for them, it does put a bit of a wall around the wide platforms, whereas with the hybrid situation, you are actually reaching more people than than you could just in one platform.
That's right. And being in bricks and mortar stores, and you know, I can walk to Kmart or Target and see my books on the shelves, which is really nice. So there's definite benefits, and I love my acquiring editor, who's actually just recently left Mills Boon, but we worked together a long time, and I learned so much from her. I think that you know, if you can find someone, whether that's your indie or editor, or someone from a publishing house, but that finding the right people to learn from is so important. And I was very lucky because she was a great publishing partner.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's cool.
And so if there's someone out there, one of our listeners, thinking, oh, I'm a self-publisher, but I'd love to publish with Mills Boon and or other publishers, do you have any pieces of advice, or some you know, what are some of the challenges or things that they should look out for to make it go better?
I think read whatever you're going to submit to. So if it is Mills Boon, read the line that you're intending to submit to, and know what the sort of conventions of that line are. So there's all sorts of different romance novels within the Mills Boon umbrella. Obviously, with any submission to a traditional publisher or indie book, make your opening as amazing and unputdownable as possible, because you can imagine how many submissions these guys get. That's really the first page has just got to get attention, and you know, work on your voice, hone your craft, all the things that are equally important for self-publishing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And don't take no. I'm talking to you guys, and behind my screen is framed my rejection letter from 1999. So take your first no as the answer. Keep going.
Love it.
Love it. Use it as a way to drive you forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my reminder that whenever I get a bit of a knock, or I'm worried about something, or sales are a bit slumpy or whatever, go, that's okay.
Things
great.
Go up and down. That's awesome. I love that. I love that attitude, actually. Like, you know, a reminder that even if it was down at one point, it goes up again. It always does.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. So you're also a working mum, essentially. So you're writing, you've got 2 kids. Can you you're running them around, doing all the mum stuff, and then writing. So how do you manage that? Like, how do you write 120 books with 2 children? I only have 1, and
so I find it easier now than when they were little. So in 2014, my son was, when I first self-published, he was 3, my daughter was nearly 2, and that was hard. Like I was caught off guard by the fact that all of a sudden this was clearly going to be a viable career if I could just get the time to push into it. My husband works full time, and obviously there was no reason to think that on the basis of having had a couple of good months he could leave his job or anything like that. So it's like we really had to work out how to make it work. I was blessed with good nappers, so my kids would nap 2 to 3 hours a day, and I synced their naps from very early on to give me that nap time. But I was also very determined. So if I had a word count goal in mind every day, and if I didn't hit it in their nap time, it didn't matter how tired I was. When my husband got home from work, AirPods were in and I was writing till I got to my word count, or I'd be up at 5 in the morning. And I still really follow that. So when I'm in a writing week, I'm up at 5 in the morning. I write for an hour and a half before I go for a run. So usually by the time I switch on to mumming, doing the lunch boxes, which I did before I came in to chat to you guys, have fun. I like to have worked for an hour to an hour and a half and gone for a run. So and in an hour to an hour and a half, I can write 3,000 to 4,000 words. So if that is what I do in a day, I don't feel terrible. But again, and I know that I don't write like that every week. It's when I write a book, I write it quite obsessively. But then I might have 3 weeks where I'm doing that, or I'm doing admin or editing or thinking of ideas or watching movies and, you know, getting inspiration. But when I'm in a book, I usually come back for 2 or 3 more 1-hour stints through the day. And in that 1 hour, I call it my 1 hour work window. And it's just, everything goes into flight mode, and I just hone completely into the book and race myself to get as many words done as I can.
Nice.
And that's
Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm definitely 80% pantser. So I tell the story to myself as I write, and I think that's part of why I write very quickly. So again, behind my screen, I've got a sign that says, see it like a movie, atmosphere, character, tension, and heart. So they're the things for me. I see it like a movie in my mind, but I want every scene to have the atmosphere, to feel the tension and the heart. Like that's my romance that I'm writing. But I do always know the couple's core conflict, because I feel that in a romance, that's obviously what drives and propels the story, is why can't they be together? Why are they at loggerheads? What's holding them back? So I definitely know their conflict and their sort of backstory issues that they'll resolve as the story goes on. I usually have a Hollywood moment in my mind that I'm building towards, like that really memorable moment of the book that I want to get my couple, whether that's a moment that they're fighting or making love or coming to an understanding of each other. But there's like this crucial scene that I like to picture, and that's at a strong opening. I spend probably the most time ruminating on how can I introduce my people to give them maximum appeal and interest. So, you know, what's going to be sympathetic about her or him, what's going to be, you know, sometimes that's having the prologue of, especially if I'm writing like a really I write a lot of quite hard seeming alpha heroes. So I find to humanize them early on by showing maybe a scene when they're 5 and they're having, reading a book with their mum who then dies or something like that, that just shows you that they weren't always that way. And that's maybe, so I spend a lot of time thinking about how I'm going to introduce my people. But for the most part, the story, I find I just organically feel my way through, which can be a problem when you write quickly, because if you take the wrong fork in the road, you potentially write 10,000 words down that road.
So can you just go over it? I love that what you said about see it like a movie. What were can you just repeat that one again?
So see it like a movie: atmosphere, character, tension, and heart.
Nice.
So I really do, when I get into my flow state, I really do see my story in my head, and I feel almost like I'm just transcribing it. It's not every day is not like that. Every book's not like that. Sometimes it's more of a mechanical process where I really have to stop and think. But as much as possible, I try to do my thinking away from the keyboard, so that by the time, it's a great time to go for a walk or have a cup of tea or fold the laundry or whatever, so that by the time I sit down to do my 1 hour work window, I've got an idea of where I'm going and I can push on.
Yeah,
I really like the idea of the 1 hour work window. Like
I
that
do too.
Appeals to me, like this. I'm just going to do it for 1 hour. I'm competing against myself to get as many words done, and it's kind of I love that compulsiveness of just kind of and doing
it's
it 3
amazing.
or 4 times.
And you get faster. So your first few hours or however many times, and you can push yourself because it's just 1 hour, and then you reward yourself with a walk or a coffee or whatever it is that you want to do. But I don't like the idea, and I've fallen into the trap myself, where you're sitting at your computer for 6 hours, but you don't achieve very much because you're not doing it with that intention. So you're sort of in and out maybe of social media, or you have to Google something, or you've got to pay a bill, or an email pings in or whatever. So I actually set the stopwatch on my phone, go to flight mode on my devices, and that's it. Just hammer and tong for 1 hour.
Nice.
I love the idea too of actually compartmentalizing your work month, if you like, because I honestly believe that if you stay within the book, it's easier to write. If you spend a few days away from it, which we all have done, it's so much harder to get back in. You almost forget what you're up to or where you were headed. And when you are a pantser, it's really important, isn't it? It's really important that you have the flow of the story.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that I say, talking about productivity, is even if all you do is reread a bit of your book, if you can't write that day, but you can pull it up on your phone and reread a bit, keep your characters right at the top of your brain, because it's so much harder to dive. That's actually the hardest part, is the diving back in. So what I'll do that's part of, for me, the sort of 5 a.m. writing is where I find you're in that amazing dreamlike state still, and you somehow, for me anyway, the creativity feels much easier to access. I used to read my book before bed every night, and I thought that helped. It probably does in some part, but now I'm able to access the story when I wake up, pull the laptop out from under the bed and go. Yeah, I have to put it under the bed, because if I put it beside the bed, I'll step on it for sure. So
I love that idea.
So does your husband get up at 5 a.m. in the morning as well, or is he?
Oh no, he's called the Rock. He's the Rock. He sleeps through everything.
Wow, that's good.
So you don't actually move out of the bedroom; you just start writing.
Yeah, for that hour, I do it in bed. I will make a coffee, because I like to have a coffee, but I don't go on social media. Don't look at news websites. I just open my story and go. And that's probably my most productive hour of the day in terms of writing.
Yeah.
But the other thing about the hour of the 1 hour work window is because I don't like admin bleeding into my writing weeks, but you obviously still have to attend to some admin from time to time. So it means I can really compartmentalize, I'm going to do an hour of writing, and then I'll go for a walk, and then I'll come back and I'll do a half hour of admin, and then another hour of writing. You can really structure your day, which I find works for me.
So how many weeks out of the month would you consider writing weeks, Claire? Like, would it be 1 out of 4, or is there a pattern?
It really changes. So sometimes it depends on my schedule. I've actually just cleared a backlog and I can breathe, which is nice. But I would have said probably 2 to 3 weeks out of 4 for the first half of this year. I've done a lot of writing, which is how I've managed to clear my backlog, which I somehow got myself into. but it does vary. Like now I've actually just had 3 weeks of catching up on admin, and it has been blissful to finally feel like I've, done little jobs that I've had on a Post-it note on my screen for 3 months, making it.
Right. Yeah.
So how many books are you writing a year, like now?
Yeah, so again, I have like a spreadsheet, but I don't know off the top of my head. I think this year it will be about 9 books, but 2 of those are longer, so they're sort of 80,000 word books.
Oh, wow.
So, but I actually only have, I think, 3 books left to go this year.
Okay.
So my goodness.
And one of those is an 80,000. Yes, but I know what I'm writing. So for me, that's it's not plotted out, but I know the important elements of the story. And so I know that when I sit down to write it, I hope, I shouldn't jinx myself, but I'm hoping that it will come to me.
Yeah.
So you're planning out a year in advance, like you'll get to, like, say, imagine Christmas or something like that, and you'll plan out the next year?
I do, yes. So with Mills Boon, I've got contractual delivery dates, so that helps.
Right.
I know where those are. I've got a wall planner that I can see which has so I start off by blocking out the school holidays because that's harder to write. I have cleared my so obviously for your Northern Hemisphere listeners, that for us our big break is over, our summer, which is sort of December, January. So I've cleared that so that I don't have any books due, so that I can just enjoy that. I'm a real Christmas lover, and so I like to be able to throw myself into the celebration. But in terms of my self-published books, yes, I try to space them out so that there's a good spread in terms of, so that it keeps sales buoyed, basically.
Yeah.
2 to 3 months, but I also have box sets releasing in between my individual books. So just to make sure that I've got relatively frequent releases.
Please, please, please tell me you have assistants.
I do have a bit of really underutilized. I need more help. I really do need more help, but she is amazing. It's my fault because I need to. I'm not a very good delegator. I've got to get better at that.
So when you're talking about admin and the other things you're doing, so obviously the writing is taking up a large portion of what your time. Do you have a newsletter? Are you on social media? Like, what other things are you doing to support your writing?
Yes, but all very peripatetically. Like I wish I could be better. So I do have a newsletter. I have a good, quite nicely engaged list. And I will send a newsletter when I have a release, which is, again, I know it's sort of the opposite of what you should do. But again, I get clicks and opens. And
but also you're releasing a lot though, Claire. So probably your newsletter send out rate would be similar to somebody that's maybe publishing 3 books a year, but is still sending it out monthly. So,
I think that's the expectation of your readers, that they're going to get a book every. I mean, why wouldn't you send a newsletter just for that? Seriously, it's like you don't need to make it harder, do you? Like to think of fun things to tell them.
That's right. I tend to put my writing into my books, but it's one of those things that I think I could probably do a bit better. But at the same time, it does work for me. So when I send out a newsletter, and I just love the data we can track with as indies. So I love that I can send a newsletter and then go to my KDP dashboard and see pre-orders ramp up, or so I know that my newsletter list is engaged. It's probably the best form of social media. Social media, I'd put it under that umbrella. I do some Facebook advertising, but not much. That's a bit FOMO. It feels like one of those things you should do, doesn't it? But
yes. Yes.
I think it has an impact. I don't know how much of an impact, but I think it's good to be on there. But I'd say my newsletter is the best part of that sort of advertising that I do.
And are you publishing in a long series with your self-publishing books? I'm talking about, like, how many do you have a limit? Do you do 5 a series and then move on to another one? How do you?
Really varies by how many siblings I can invent that are interesting. So, so I think 6 books is probably my average. I'm working on a series at the moment that I've just about to release the 5th book in the series, which will be 9 books at this stage. So I've got an idea for a couple of side characters that have stories I want to tell. So yeah, it really does vary depending on the structure of the series. But I do love a series as a reader and a writer. I love to return to that same.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We preach the series here, like, you know, it makes it easier for everything in terms of readers to find you, but also for advertising, and you can see the lift across the series if you're running promos and, you know, free days on KDP, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I didn't, for a long time, I wrote just standalone books, which I also love, but I think it was when I did my first series and I could, and pre-ordered. So I didn't used to do pre-orders. And then when I did my first series, I pre-ordered the second book. And I'm someone who gets very anxious if I put a book up for pre-order and I haven't written the bulk of it. That terrifies me. Even now, when I do know I can finish the book. But I started doing my first series as pre-orders, and that was addictive to see that you could actually have a guaranteed number of sales could go live.
Yeah. And it's
I love it too.
I've got this is one of my series behind me. There they go. And I like the branding with the series, the way that you can clearly identify that it is.
Absolutely. One of the questions that we get asked, or one of the things our listeners love to know, is kind of the technical part of writing. Do you write in Scrivener? Are you a Word girl? What kind of tools do you use?
Yeah, I'm a Word girl, and a very linear Word girl. So Ali Blake, who's part of the How to Write Academy with me, she's not a linear person. She will write, she jumps around, she gets an idea for a scene and she puts it down, and it makes my head hurt to even contemplate that. Because for me, I open a Word document and I basically write my title, and then that's it. Nothing sophisticated. I format in vellum once it's done if it's an indie book, but I'm pretty basic with tech. I have bought Scrivener. I love the idea of Scrivener. Are you guys Scrivener?
Scrivener, yeah.
I'm the idea too.
PC? Are you on a Mac or PC?
I'm Mac. I'm not sure PC has all the equivalent to this, but I like the cloudiness of Mac. I go from my MacBook in bed to my iMac to my phone sometimes if I want to quickly fix something. Which
I was
again,
just going to say that vellum is awful on a PC, so I just wondered if that was why you. I love Scrivener because I can see the chapters and the breakdown. I find writing in a Word document too kind of, it's unwieldy almost, but it's just different brains, right? And it's an example of how we all think differently and what works for us.
I'm very visual, so I like to have things down the side, and I'll actually have a list of my characters down the side and their traits, and then like I'll just copy and paste that into all the chapters, so that even though I haven't even started writing those chapters, I can immediately go, oh yes, that's the butcher and that's the gossip, and so I know who I've got.
See, I think this is something I need to conquer, because it's one of those things where if it ain't broke, don't fix it, to some extent, but I can see how handy that would be, and especially with bigger novels that I want to tackle. I've got one book coming up that I'd like to write, which is a bit more of an ensemble cast, and I can see that the value of that.
Yeah, it definitely is definitely helpful.
You don't necessarily even have to write the book in Scrivener though. So I like the planning aspect. I like the corkboard and I like playing all of that. But I prefer to write in Word. So I have it there, sort of for almost like the book structure and the characters, and I like attaching little pictures. I also pretty sure it's a procrastination technique as well.
I was going to say
I'm sure too. Yeah.
But if I'm sitting in there writing in it, I get too distracted. So, but it's
whatever works.
Whatever works, and clearly it's working for you, Claire. So I would be reluctant.
I wouldn't be
to change
changing anything.
My equivalent to that is sometimes I will do my cover before I've done the book. So that I've got my couple that I can look at, and I do that if I think that it's going to be a particularly difficult book to write, so that I just know.
So you do your own covers?
I do for my self-published books, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, wow, you are a talented lady.
You are.
Yeah,
because that all takes time.
I love that, and that's part of the thing. I love that. If I feel that I've loaded a pre-order and it's a bit sluggish, I will tweak the blurb, and then I'll wait a week, and then I'll tweak the subtitle, wait a week, and then I'll change the cover, and I could change the cover twice in a pre-order period just to get it to hit the market, because I do it myself. so I'm not having to go back to a cover artist.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes, yes.
Oh, that's
You know?
interesting. I've never heard of anyone
It's
talk
a
about that
really
before.
cool
No.
idea.
What
I've heard of
no.
people running ads to it to test covers, but
Yeah.
that's a really interesting one.
Ah, just change it.
I'll change my blurb, but I just, I couldn't imagine.
How long are
But
your
then again,
pre-order?
I don't do my own covers, so.
How long are your pre-order periods?
It varies depending on my organization level. So I think I've got one coming out on the 31st of July, which has probably been about 3 months. But I've got a book coming out on the 27th of July, and this was a complete accident that I like. That was an absolute a scheduling error from me. I would never usually bring 2 books out 3 days apart because they're not the same series. But that's been a year's pre-order. And I'd sort of just forgotten about it when I was planning for this series. So this is the 5th book in the series. So I was just focused on spacing it correctly with its predecessor book. And that was very silly. But in any event, I don't think it's going to matter because they're completely different books. And I think will hit different readers. One's quite dark. And the other is, very much in their contemporary romance vein.
So you wouldn't consider moving that pre-order, like bringing one of them forward to the...
I could. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference either way.
Right.
And I started because I had to make myself feel better. I thought, you know what, it's going into Northern Hemisphere sort of peak reading period, that August, summer holiday time. So I'm hoping that having 2 books out will actually be a real kick and get the algorithms really firing.
Well, it'd be quite exciting for your readers, wouldn't it? Because they don't have to wait. It's like, oh, another
this one's done, now that one.
Exactly. Do you put your do you plan your releases around the release of your traditionally published work as well, Claire, or is that kind of...
I do try to. So I try not to have an indie book out the same month as a Mills Boon. I don't think it would hugely matter because it's just more for me to be able to put a little bit of fuss on social media.
Sure.
I like to be able to have them spread out.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you don't have anything, obviously, in your contract that precludes you from doing that.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
I suppose the contract is probably based on just probably pre-self-publishing or, it's a pretty standard contract, but yes.
Cool.
Oh, that's fascinating. So the other thing I want to talk about is you've got a really amazing mindset, I think, like a really positive kind of upbeat kind of view of things happening. So how do you maintain that, and what do you do to, self-publishing can be, hard, a long slog, and what do you do to kind of maintain that mindset?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I think surrounding yourself with the right people is really important. So I didn't have my village when I first started self-publishing, but I found them through the Romance Writers of Australia. People who are your biggest cheerleaders, who understand it. So having writer friends when you're a writer is really important and helpful because they get it, and you can call them to go through a plot problem, or if you feel anxious about anything. It's quite a unique career, so it's very nice to have people who understand. I really lean into what I love. So for me, I love writing and I love doing covers, and I don't love doing advertising. And so I really focus on the things that I love. And yes, I write fast and I write a lot, but I find that for me, it actually fills my well. It's that I find that restorative. And I do try to, I limit the things that I listen to. I try not to be competitive at all with anybody. I think that if you fall into the trap of looking at other authors, there's always going to be a heap of people more successful who are making it look so much easier and who are speaking with way more authority and confidence. I have massive imposter syndrome all the time. So I really carefully curate the podcasts I listen to with very positive, wonderful people so that I walk away uplifted rather than going, oh my God, I know nothing.
Yeah.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah. I mean, even just us doing the podcast, some weeks we kind of leave going, well, that person does a lot more than I do.
Everybody
should I try that?
Everyone does what works for them, right? And I think that's it. Is there's no one way to do it, and you can't. Anybody who tells you do this, and you'll be a success, that's not the case. It's you have to find the path that works for you and that's sustainable for you, because like writing like I write isn't going to be for everybody. Doing your own covers isn't for everybody. It's just that I enjoy it.
And
you're obviously skilled at it too. That's the other important thing. that they're meeting the reader expectations.
Yeah. I think also that, like, so for example, someone comes along and I'm going to write for Mills Boon, just like Claire does. I can, she's making all that money, she's doing well, but I've never read a Mills Boon in my life. Do you know, like there's that, well, actually, then you're going to need to go and actually read a lot of Mills Boon and get the kind of knowledge and the love for that genre that you have. And, it's not the same journey at all, because you've got that love and that connection to that world that you have developed naturally, if you know what I mean.
I think it's that authenticity that especially romance readers, because we're a voracious mob. Like I'm not writing, I'm reading, and I'm reading a lot of books. And so if someone's kind of just trying to plug in the elements that they think should be there and they're not writing from their heart, like that's a huge part of it.
Absolutely can. We've got that antenna, I think, as romance readers, that sort of slightly cynical antenna now, I have to say, after decades of reading romance. You can tell when somebody's kind of phoning it in, or it's just
even sometimes authors that we love and have loved for a long time will put out a book and you kind of go, phoning it in.
Having said that, book. One man's phoning it in is another man's favorite book, so
exactly. Don't be too critical. I should so that's really cool. And do you have any aside from just curating what you hear and see, but any other advice in terms of mindset or keeping going, or those kinds of things?
I think that you have to write because you love writing. I think that's the most important thing, because it's not easy. I mean, even like I will have some books that are nightmare books, and you have to push through. You're going to get rejections at any stage in your career. It doesn't matter how many books you've sold. You're going to write some books that you absolutely love, and then they're going to hit the market and not do very well. And so you've just got to keep writing the books that you love to write. And also, I always say to myself, don't live and die by the numbers, because you can't watch 1 week and go, oh no, it's a bad week, and the next week it'll be up or something will happen. And I suppose as an indie, one of the most important things that I try to stick to is just being really nimble. So what worked for me a year ago might not work for me now. So it's always sort of looking at your business model and thinking how you can adapt, or what you could, I definitely need to go back and redo quite a lot of my covers for my earlier books. It's just, Amazon is forever changing things. So it's that keeping an eye on, now you can add different keywords, and so it's keeping your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the indie world so that you can, capitalize on those changes.
Yeah, that's good advice. I like that. Be nimble. I'm going to write that on my wall. That's awesome.
I love it.
So I think we're coming towards the end of our interview here, but I just wanted to ask, is there one piece of advice that you would love to give our listeners that you think, well, piece of gold, we want that? I
think she just gave it.
I think there is not one. Like I mean, gosh, everybody's different. Don't try to emulate someone else's career. Don't take your rejections. All of those things are so true. Surround yourself with good people. Everything that I've said, like I think, and have faith that you can do it. It's, I think that you can get rejected, but also not blindly. Like it's, what is that expression? I wish I could remember this, because I'm not going to say it as eloquently, but good luck starts with hard work, or something like that. You have to improve your writing. You have all the time. We're all always improving. It doesn't matter how many books you've written. I don't think that you've written this book and it's going to become a bestseller. Maybe for someone, but highly unlikely. You've really got to improve your craft and keep learning, and be humble.
So talking of learning, you mentioned briefly about the writing classes that you just said. Could you just talk us a little bit about what you're doing there and who you're doing it with?
So 3 of the wonderful people that I choose to surround myself with are Jennifer St. George, Amy Andrews, and Ali Blake, who are wonderful romance writers I met through the Romance Writers of Australia, and we've been really good friends for a long time. But it was during COVID that we got talking about, we should do a course, a really intensive romance writing course that teaches people who, because we hear it all the time, I want to write a book, I'd love to write a romance one day. You go to a party, what do you do? Oh, I'm a romance writer. Oh, I'd love to do that. Okay, but it's, or I've got a great idea for you. My great uncle Benny met blah, blah, blah. It's more than an idea. So what we came up with was the How to Write Academy. And under that, we have 2 courses. We have How to Write Love, which is a 12-week romance writing course that we run 3 times a year. And we have How to Self-Publish. So with How to Write Love, we go over all of the romance writing basics so that you can learn about conflict, tension, dialogue, setting, writing a series. We touch on publishing in that. So we talk a little bit about self-publishing versus trad publishing, how to write a synopsis, all of the things that get overlooked a bit when people go, I've got this great idea, it's going to be this and this, and then they don't realize, yes, but you need to drill down into their conflict and their backstory and how do you reveal that. So we love that course. It has had such great feedback. We're so proud of it. It's been amazing. So the next course is in July, and then there'll be one towards the end of the year. And our self-publishing course is, again, like I said, it's the landscape's always changing. So what we've tried to do with our self-publishing course, it's just, I just love this course. We talk about all the things that are pretty much non-variable, like your branding, your social media, structuring your business, things that people from the outset, it's like this foggy world of what do I do? So this is a great starting point to give you a real overview of the industry and some tips for how to progress within it.
Yeah. Nice.
That's
Is that
awesome.
one ongoing, or is that also like to a schedule, the self-publishing one?
That one is, we do it a few times a year. Yeah.
Cool.
Are they ones where it's videos, or are you doing like?
So we actually do video. So it's run through Teachable, and we've got video seminars, but they're not live, they're pre-record. And they're the most amazing workbooks for each course that you can download and keep forever. So you only have access to the course for a limited time. But because, so Jen St. George, who's our wonderful romance writer, is actually was a creative writing university lecturer. So she's done all this research on courses, and the number of people who sign up to these courses that are perpetual who never complete them. And we don't want that. So we've actually created a very supportive, there's an online Facebook group for each course cohort. So, and we pop in there all the time and chat to them. So it's a very hands-on course for the 12 weeks that you do it. We encourage our course participants to write 2,500 words a day, so that by the end of the course, you'll have over 20,000 words written. So it's a real hand-holding trying to get you to actually do what you've committed to do at the outset of the course.
That's so intriguing. I've never heard.
So cool. I love that approach, because that's often, particularly when you're starting out, you need that real kind of community around you, because it's very hard for other people to understand why you're sitting there with a laptop. And you
don't get as much out of it, do you, if you float in and out? You really,
no, you don't.
really got to buy it, do it.
You've only got those 12 weeks, because I think it's some number like 87% of people who buy a course don't actually.
That's exactly the statistic Jen said, and we were so passionate about it. We don't just want people to waste money, we actually want them to do the course and write their romance. That's why we're doing it. It's we genuinely want it to be a course that helps people follow their dream. And then we have this Facebook group, How to Write Lots, which started with a sort of 50K in May scenario, but same thing, it's just a really warm, supportive environment where some people are coming in, they write 300 words a day, they have full-time jobs, and they're doing the kid juggle, and we're such cheerleaders of that, because any words on the page is bringing you closer to getting your book done.
Absolutely. Can anybody join that one, or is that for your course participants?
Absolutely. So anybody can join. It's how to write ... lots !
I love it. I'm going to write that down here. So I think we had a special treat for our listeners today.
Yes, so we would love with you guys to give away a free course of choice to a listener. And how would you guys like to do that?
Well, I tell you what we would love is whether you could pop a comment on our YouTube on this particular video here. And for anybody listening, go along to our YouTube channel, Spa Girls Podcast, and drop a note whether you'd like to win the How to Write Love or the self-publishing one. And then email us at hello@spargirlspodcast.com. I'll put all the instructions in the show notes for this on both the podcast app and also YouTube. Make sure that you email us as well to tell us that you've done it, and we will draw somebody at the end of July, on July the 31st, 2024. We are in the year of 2024, if you're listening in the future, and good luck.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks
very
so
much to
much,
Claire and team for offering that. That's really exciting.
That's awesome. Thank
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we are so proud of these courses. So I look forward to seeing your listeners.
you. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So go forth and enter, I say.
Go forth.
Awesome prize. I'm thinking, oh, which one do I want to? Maybe I'm going to enter.
No,
Am I
I'm sorry,
allowed to
Trudy.
like
I've put that in the rules. No spa girls are allowed to enter.
No.
So
we will
dumb.
also, of course, in the show notes, put links to the not only Claire but also the website for the course as well.
Yeah.
Courses,
Amazing.
and
Thank you,
course
guys.
I'm not quite sure what the course
Awesome. Thank you for going through that, Shah, and thank you so much, Claire, for joining us here today in the spa. It's been fantastic. I've got so many notes. You've pinged a few ideas for me. It's been fantastic
and just inspiring. Honestly, there's nothing better than speaking to somebody that's living their dream. Honestly, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, it has been such a privilege to talk to you guys because I am a long-time listener, so I love your podcast so much. So it's been absolutely quite surreal and wonderful to be here chatting to you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So much. Now, where can we find you yourself, Claire?
Yes, so I'm at clareconnelly.com. It's 2 N's, 2 L's, and I'm on all the social medias at Claire Writes Love.
Fantastic.
Oh.
And where can we be found, Shah?
We can be found at spargirlspodcast.com, and we can be found on YouTube at Spargirls Podcast. And like I said, check the show notes.
Yeah. Awesome. Everyone needs to go right now to the YouTube channel and make that comment on this. If you're already listening to it, go down below, make a comment
right now,
and subscribe if you feel like it. Not even if you feel like it, just to subscribe because I said so.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We're super excited to have you here with us this week, and we'll be back again next week for another episode. But for now, farewell.
Keep well. Bye.